Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and thank you for joining us today as we continue to interview the contributors to the Canadian crime anthology Cold Canadian Crime, published by Crime Writers of Canada. Joining me today is one of the three males who, let's say, qualified to have their short story in the story. This is David A. Poulsen. How are you today, David?
I'm well, Eric. Thanks. Thanks so much for doing this. I'm excited to be a part of it. And until about 15 seconds ago, I didn't realize there was only three guys. I guess I didn't pay attention to that.
Yeah, you, Blair, and now I'm forgetting one of the three guys. There is a third, and I've already probably interviewed him. Tom.
Okay.
Also, let's just apologize really quickly. You're in the process of moving.
Yes.
If somebody says, "Hey, you look very pale," it's because you've taken on the curtains.
That's why. Yeah, that's why.
So that is not a natural pale look. Let me read your bio first. Let's start with that, because even though we worked together, I didn't know this until I looked up your website. David has been a broadcaster, teacher, football coach, radio cowboy, stage and film actor, and most of all, writer. His writing career began in earnest when his story, The Welcomin, won the 1984 Alberta Culture Short Story Competition. Now, as an author, he has 25 books, many for middle-aged readers and young adults. David has completed his master's degree in creative writing at UBC and has served as a writer in residence for the Saskatoon Public Library in 2012-2013. If you don't mind, let's start with your story. Your story is titled "The Day Peter Gzowski Died." I'm a little bit younger than you, so I had to look up who Peter was. And I guess maybe the most important information is he died in 2002, as I think you called it Mr. Canadian. Is that what it is?
He really was, he was the host of a CBC radio program for years, a morning program called Morningside, and it was so popular. And it really was this beautiful magnifying glass on all things Canadian, everything from, how to cook something out in the East Coast that came out of the ocean to absolutely every aspect of Canadian life. And he celebrated all of those things. He was an absolute encyclopedia about all of those things. And most importantly, shared them with Canadians. So he was kind of one of my heroes. And I actually, he also put on a golf tournament, several golf tournaments across Canada, supporting literacy. And at all of his golf tournaments, he had a writer in residence for that day. He called it a poet laureate sort of golf. And so he wrote something about the golf tournament in addition to participating in it. And I got to be the poet laureate at one of his Calgary golf tournaments. And it was really fun and great to finally meet him and spend some time with him. It was a great day.
I just learned something else new in your bio. I didn't mention poet. Didn't realize you were a poet also.
Well, not so much. I wouldn't call me. I'm more of a admirer of those who can actually write good poetry as opposed to being
yeah, I think most mystery writers are.
Yeah.
Peter Gzowski had actually very little to do with the story. He's sort of at the beginning and at the end, and it sort of just really marks the day. And I'm assuming it's a tribute to him. But why did you pick that as a title?
Yeah, well, just for that very reason. All of the action in the story takes place on that one day. And my central character, a private detective, encounters the news that Peter Gzowski had passed away that day. And then in the course of the next 24 hours, is confronted with a mystery and into which he is drawn and deals with over the course of that day. And of course, it also ends then with another kind of nod to the passing of Peter Gzowski.
Yeah, definitely. I also got sort of a feel of a noirish feel to this story. I don't know, maybe because it's the private detective, but I know my friends like Sam Weave and Tara Moss would appreciate the noirness of this. I don't find your other work typically considered noir. So why did you sort of try something different, maybe?
I don't know. It just felt comfortable with that particular story, that it just kind of worked in that kind of a genre. So I'm just looking. I just have to take a second. We did explain that we're in the process of a move right here. And I
Yes,
just have to pass along that the keys to the truck are in my big coat, the red coat. Sorry about that.
it's all right. It's Zoom. We're all used to it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so you're right. I've kind of always loved sort of hard-boiled detective fiction, and I love noir. And I guess I just thought this particular story lends itself to that kind of a feel. I don't know that I set out to write something that would be considered that people would look at and go, okay, that's noir, and they either like it or they don't. But I didn't set out with that goal in mind. But it just, as I say, kind of felt like the right kind of tone for it, and that's kind of where I went.
You and I had to speak a little bit beforehand because, as you said, you had 25 books published already and still going. And we had to sort of pick which books we wanted to talk about. And I brought up, I wanted to talk about your young adult novel Numbers, mainly because it was selected for the Sakamura Medal awarded to English-speaking high school students in Japan to their favorite novel of the year. So could you tell us a little bit about Numbers, and also, I guess, some of the journeys that happened because of it?
Yeah, no, Numbers was a book that I wrote, and it's kind of a look at a situation that has happened in some schools in Canada and elsewhere, for that matter, and that is the teaching of the fact that the Holocaust didn't take place, and so of course that's concerning, because it's something that is taught and is really kind of a horrible thing. And we had a very famous case out here in Alberta. So I kind of wanted to address that. And what I like to do in my young adult writing, and most of my writing for kids, is I wanted to put my kid characters in situations that are difficult but not unreal, and then see how they are able to deal with those situations and work their way through them. And so that's what I did with that story, where there's a high school where the most popular teacher in the school is a Holocaust denier, and conveys that to his students. And it's really difficult for those students to stand up against that kind of teaching because they like the guy so well. And so that was kind of the conundrum that they're faced with in the story of Numbers. So then one day I get this big brown envelope a few months after Numbers had been published, big brown envelope in the mail from Japan. Well, I don't happen to know anybody in Japan. And so I thought it's probably a scam. The emperor is going to give me 750 million yen if I just send my banking information. But it wasn't that. In there was the announcement that the book Numbers had won the Sakura Medal, which is granted to the author that is voted on in the English-speaking high schools for their favorite book of the past year. And luckily for me, I didn't even know that Numbers was in Japan. And yet here it was there, and it was selected by the students as their favorite book for the previous year. And when I got that envelope in this beautiful gold medal, it is the Sakura medal, and a certificate saying it had won, I sent off I guess a somewhat facetious email saying, well, you know what you need to do? You need to bring the winning author over there to talk to the kids who voted for this book. And thinking, well, I'll never, that's going to go exactly nowhere. And sure enough, a few months later, I got a response to that email saying, yeah, it's all set up. You're coming to Japan, and then you're going right from Japan to South Korea because they're going to be looking at that book next year. So that was a wonderful kind of byproduct of a book that I'm really quite proud of, and did well, and I loved being in Japan and South Korea was one of the truly thrills of my life.
Yeah, that would be amazing. To add to that a little bit from what I read, numbers has since been added to the new English curriculum for grade 10 in Saskatchewan. So even more good news.
Yeah, it's exciting when your book becomes like a novel study in junior or senior high school, which I've had happen with 2 or 3 of my books, and that's that's really exciting. I mean, obviously we write our books to be read, so when you find out that they are by the very audience that you target, that's a good feeling for sure.
So coming from that success of writing for YA, you told me beforehand that you started writing for adult, but rather reluctantly. So could you tell us why you were reluctant to write for adults?
Yeah, Eric, the simple truth is my go-to reading has been, since I was a kid, mysteries. My dad introduced me to Perry Mason novels when I was very, very young, 11 or 12 years old. I was reading these Perry Mason courtroom drama type. And that kind of introduced me to the mystery genre, and I loved it. I don't say that at 11 or 12 I understood everything I was reading, but I loved it. And that kind of triggered in me this love of mystery that has continued to this very day. And it is still my go-to genre to read most of the time. I love it. And I guess because of that, because it is the thing that I probably would most like to succeed at, I was afraid to try. Because what if I didn't succeed? What if I stunk as an adult mystery writer, when that is the one thing I probably most wanted to be good at? So I did the cowardly thing. I didn't try, because I guess if you don't try, you can't fail. But you also can't succeed. And then in 2014, I got working on a book, and or at least the idea for a book. And I chugged away at it and chugged away at it, and it just kept coming together and wouldn't go away. And finally, I finished it, and I realized, hey, I've just written an adult mystery novel. The question is it any good? And one of the things I've done, I love reading the first novels in a series by mystery novelists. For example, Ian Rankin's first Rebus book, or Louise Penny's first book in her wonderful series. And one of the things that I've noticed, Eric, and you probably have too, is that writers evolve. They get better at what they do. The very first Rebus book is not nearly as good as the 8th or 9th or 10th one. Isn't to say it wasn't good. It was clearly good enough to be published and be popular enough to generate a series, but it wasn't as good as as the later books. So I decided, okay, Serpents Rising, my first mystery novel, I'm not going to try to compare that to all of the works of those great authors. I'm going to try to compare it to the first book in the various series. And in doing so, I thought to myself, you know what? It's okay. Not to say, for example, that I'm Ian Rankin or Louise Penny or any of those people, but I felt that the book stood up fairly well in that kind of a spotlight. So that, with that in mind, I sent it off to my agent. He sent it off to a publisher. It was published, and happily did well enough that the publisher then came back to me and said, how would you like to turn this into a series? We'll offer you a 3-book contract for books 2, 3, and 4. And that became the Cullen and Cobb Mysteries, of which Serpents Rising is the first book in the series. So it did kind of finally, after I overcame that reluctance to try, I did try, and it worked out okay.
And how many have you written? At least 5, I think, right?
4 in the series. And I'm now working on a 5th book that I don't know will be part of that series. It may wind up being the start of a different series, or maybe even a standalone novel. But I have this idea that I wanted to. It's set in Calgary, like the Cullen Cobb Mysteries are, but I'm not sure yet whether it'll be a book or not.
Oh, okay. Must be early stages, I'm hoping then.
Yes.
Before we go, well, we could talk about how you were a member, or currently a member, but a board member of Crime Writers of Canada. But I thought we'd talk about When Words Collide, just because supposedly the next one's going to be, well, I know the next one's going to be live, which everybody's excited about, getting off the Zoom and actually doing a live event. But sadly, I've been told that it's going to be the last one. You've been quite involved when Worlds Collide. Could you tell us maybe a little bit about it and maybe why it's ending?
I wish I'd been more involved. I wish I could have contributed more, but time hasn't permitted that all the time. But I have been involved kind of on the periphery and as a participant. And it is an absolutely wonderful literary event. It takes place in Calgary in the summer and in August. And it's, you talk to writers across Canada and beyond who've been to it, and they all just love it. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. Last year, I believe, was the 10th anniversary one. Now, the last 2 or 3 have been online, as so many events have. And that's kind of tragic because the in-person event was just phenomenal. Not that the online wasn't good, but it was, because it's online, you didn't have that same kind of interaction, the same kind of energy. And for that reason, I think Randy, who worked so very, very hard putting them together, giving birth to the thing in the first place, has just said, I've kind of run out of gas. The guy's a writer, wants to write books, but on top of that, he's put together one of the great literary festivals across Canada, or maybe North America. And it is, you're right, it's too bad that this is the last one, but for anybody who's never been, as this is the last one, you certainly want to be a participant if at all possible, because it is truly remarkable.
Yeah, I've also heard, I guess, other good news is that VoucherCon's coming to Calgary.
And that is exciting
too.
Yeah. VoucherCon, of course, an international event, and I got to my first one when it was in Toronto a few years ago. I think maybe 2016. I'm not sure, Eric, but around that time. And it was fabulous. It's a wonderful, wonderful event, and I absolutely loved it. And I got a letter in the mail a while back saying, yeah, hey, we're thinking about bringing VoucherCon to Calgary. What do you, as a writer and as a person involved in the literary scene in Alberta, think? And I said, I think it's great. Bring it on. And I think there's going to be tremendous enthusiasm. And that's another event that I can't remember which year. It's a couple of years off, obviously, because there's a tremendous amount of planning. But man, when it happens in Calgary, I would urge Canadian writers, anybody who's listening to this program, and people beyond that, hey, you get a chance to be in Calgary for VoucherCon, you want to be here.
Yes, I think it's almost like the Olympics. They're planning it. They're planning it 4 years in advance, and winning the nomination was a big, I guess, feather in the cap for Calgary. So fantastic.
Yeah, I was so thrilled when I heard that. That's really exciting.
Excellent. Well, we could talk a lot longer, David, but let's keep it to that. I've been to your website, and I advise everyone to go to your website. I forget, is the A in it? Is it just David?
I believe it is. David Poulsen, author, mystery. I think if you Google it, darn thing, it'll come up anyway. So
yeah, I think you have to put the A in.
I think you do.
It is, yes. It's David A. Poulsen author.com. And I'll put it in the description too.
Okay, that's great.
Quite an accomplished author. So it was great chatting with you today. And if you're watching this around real time, the Crime Writers of Canada anthology, Cold Canadian Crime, is currently on sale, and it will be right up until the beginning of January. Amazon is promising that if you're watching it around today, December 15th, that it will arrive in the mail before Christmas. So now's your chance to catch up to it. Again, you can find more information on crimewritersofcanada.com. So thank you, David, for participating in this conversation. It's been a delight.
Well, thank you. And thanks, Eric, for doing all of these conversations. And I do want to say that Cold Canadian Crime, the people who put that together, again, the Crime Writers of Canada, tremendous job. I've read a number of the stories, love them. And I think you're right. I think it would be a great Christmas present. So happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching.